Well, 800 points down, I guess I have to, right, Connell? I mean, we closed exactly as you just said, at the session lows. I mean, a wipeout day. No other way to say it. If you look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, two of the main stocks that really fell the hardest, not surprisingly, the financials, especially in this environment. So Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, when we've been talking about this inverted yield curve all day, it just hurts these banks, the money center banks, every time they loan, their margins get thinner in this kind of an environment. And it's just showing, brass tacks takeaway, is that investors are a little bit more optimistic on the near term than on the long term. We haven't seen this pattern since 2007. That scares a lot of people. That drove a lot of the selling, and that drove a lot of the activity that we saw in the bond market, including buying so much into the 30-year that we saw the yields at levels never seen before.
All right, so the Dow shed off 800 points yesterday when the 2-year and the 10-year bond ended up inverting. And this hasn't happened since 2007, right before the financial collapse. Now, they're saying that the investors took this sign as a sign of weakness inside of the market and ended up dumping off and running the bonds in gold, which gold's up to, like $1,550 an ounce, which is amazing because it was at $1,200 last month. It's amazing growth. We're handling business and making moves. Silver's up around $15 an ounce, which is another great sign. But now, right, let's have a real conversation about what's going on. This all is tied into Trump's tariffs, all right? And he's trying to deal with the problem that started off with Richard Nixon back in the 1970s when he went over and opened up China and ended up having a conversation with Chinese. And China started becoming the world's manufacturing floor, as it were. And we started manufacturing the vast majority of our goods over there. We closed down all our plants over here. And we've been having a transference of wealth for the past 40 years. This is the reason why nobody has had any wage growth here. Now, see, in order to understand that, you have to understand that this is basically us still using slaves, all right? And it's having the same effect on the poor and working classes of our country as it did during slave times in the South. Right, a lot of people don't know that the vast majority of whites in the South were put out of work by slavery. All right, and they truly feared the poor whites in the South to the point where they had whole political movements made up in order to have the whites hate the blacks and the blacks hate the whites, because they were using black slaves as artisans and not just cotton pickers, right? And at this time in the South in the United States, they had up to like 80% of the population between Texas and West Virginia had hookworm in their feet from walking around barefoot. That's how poor they were. And it should really tell you something about what happens when you use cheap labor outside of your country to stand here and build goods for yourselves. What you're doing is you're impoverishing your own nation. Now, we've been able to borrow and put it off and push everything forward and stand here and have cheap money and keep our stock market growing and things of this nature for a long time. But the truth is that the bill's soon going to come due, right? Where we don't have enough individuals standing here being born in order to pay the bills later on. And we have so many people here now at this point that it's driven up the cost of real estate to where the average individual isn't able to live. So what do? Well, a good idea is to look at China and go, all right, well, you're one of the world's largest countries next to India, right? And say, you're the only country in the world where we have this massive trade imbalance, okay? Where you're standing here selling us stuff and we're giving you money and you're reinvesting it into your fucking infrastructure and buildings and high-speed trains and things of this nature. And we're standing here suffering. We can't do anything for our people because we're constantly having to borrow money to pay our fucking bills. And so what the Chinese are doing, they buy treasury bonds, right? And when they buy treasury bonds, they end up, having treasury bonds they get paid for. So it's like a looping cycle where they're making money off of us through the interest on the debt. So they're getting paid twice, right? They're keeping their money, right? The money's coming back to them. They're taking their money back with interest. And they're sitting here investing it. What we said is, hey, look, you now have a middle class, which is making decent amounts of money. You've had, 30 years of rising wages to the point now where it's no longer viable to be able to ship the goods back across the country or back across the oceans and bring them back into the United States. So what we want you to do is to stop tariffing the goods that are coming into your country so that we can have an opportunity to sell our manufacturing products into your country, into your people, and have a chance at that market. And the Chinese are saying, no, we don't want this to happen, all right? Because they know the situation. They know that if the Chinese people start buying goods from the Americans and the trade imbalance stops, they're not going to be able to prop up their economy and continue to do the things that they're working on with, the new Silk Road and, their investments into Africa and rebuilding their military and trying to get to the point where they're going to be a world power. And this is really what this is about. But this problem should have never been a problem from the start. We should have never had trade deals like CAFTA, which, Bill Clinton signed, which basically allowed for free trade to come into the United States, but no free trade to go back out. Because Bill Clinton, let's be honest here, was a bag. He did the same thing with NAFTA, and it cost Americans massive amounts of jobs and massive amounts of manufacturing jobs, to where guys like Anu Vlad and fucking Turd Flinging Monkey, this is where these guys here, legitimately, I don't even know why they say the things they say, right? Where they stand here and they talk about, fucking, Americans, what do you want to make work jobs? Fucking Anu Vlad's like, Americans don't want to do those jobs. We're too good for that. Well, let me be honest with you here, man. Fucking the vast majority of Americans would thoroughly enjoy having the opportunity not to have to go and debt themselves $200,000 to go to fucking college and just be able to get out of high school and get a job and go to work for the rest of their fucking lives. Support their fucking families, buy a little piece of fucking land and a house, get a dog and a fucking white picket fence and live their fucking lives. You think maybe that might be a little better than the situation that we have right now? Or just we're too good for that. You fucking, every time you hear somebody say that legitimately, just remember their face, because they should get the needle right after the communists, or maybe even right before, because they're the individuals who are standing here letting this shit continue. All right? Legitimately. They're standing here continuing to perpetuate this bullshit ideology that Americans are better than fucking being able to go and do a fucking job. I can't say that about TFM. I can't. He's a Navy dude. He went to basic. He knows what it is to work for a day. You know what I'm saying? He knows what it is to put in a day's labor. He understands. Now, he knows he's better than that, right? Because he's smarter than that. But the bitch is that the vast majority of individuals aren't. Okay? The average individual has an IQ of like 100. It is what it is. If you have an IQ of 100, you're not going to be an engineer or a computer programmer or fucking, you're not going to stand here and learn coding. No. What you're going to do is you're going to go break rocks with other rocks. You're going to pick up and move heavy shit back and forth. You're going to fucking weld. You're going to grind. You're going to do fucking work with your hands. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad thing. All right? I go, what I do for a living, and I drive for a fucking living. I do this shit on the side as a fucking hobby. I'm trying to build it into something. Maybe one day I could be in the motherfucking ring performing. That's where the fucking mentality is. But not everybody can be the clown either, as Bill Maher says. Some people have to work. People have to build things. Some people are going to have to get their hands dirty. To be a fact, the vast majority of Americans are going to have to get their fucking hands dirty. Around here, Mexicans don't do our labor. We're not like the rest of the fucking country. Like a Northeast isn't like that. You don't have, fucking vast amounts of immigrant populations to do your fucking dirty work for you, to clean your fucking toilets and shit, to do your landscaping. We still have white people doing the landscaping around here. White people do the roofing. I've never seen a Mexican do roofing around here, ever. I've never seen it. It doesn't happen. That's jobs that white people do and black people do. Black people are over here flipping houses and doing drywall. Now, I have seen Mexicans doing drywall, you know what I mean? But most of the time, people don't fucking hire them. Why? Because they don't want to put themselves out of work. People aren't dumb. They know better. That's the reality of things. You have to have consumers to buy the goods that you're selling inside of your country, or else you're going to end up with a massive revolution. And you think fucking, you know what I'm saying, like labor had to whip hand back before motherfucking the 1970s? Legit, man. Like, yo, it's going to be a whole new fucking ball game. Socialism and communism will take this bitch to fuck over by storm. You keep fucking standing here trying to push down the fucking workers of this goddamn country and tell individuals that they don't have the right to earn a fucking living. It is what it is. So what Donald Trump is doing right now is he's doing the dirty work that everybody else should have been working on for years, but nobody's had the nutsacks to fucking do it. That's the reality of things. This should have long ago been addressed. Just like Korea, just like Iran, just like everything the fuck else that he's having to deal with. Because it's all coming to a head. We can't deal with it later on. There's no more kicking the can down the road. There isn't any more time. We're fucking out of goddamn time to deal with shit anymore. Things are going to start collapsing soon. And we need to put ourselves in a better position. That dude, what was his name? Daniel Hammond, I think his name was. He said we need to take this time to fucking stand here and sure our rigging and plug our hull. You know what I'm saying? So we can weather this fucking storm. Anyway, man, this is Tom Pease of P. Noid News. You know the deal. Peace be like one. Later.